Welcome to Unload and Show Clear, the podcast about all things IDPA. And now, here's your host, the only man to shoot the same non-threat 4 times at Nationals, Lloyd Bailey.
Hey, welcome to the show. Welcome to episode 2 of Unload and Show Clear. This week, we're going to continue our series introducing you to the wonderful world of IDPA. One of the perceived drawbacks, as I mentioned last week, for the sport of IDPA is the complexity of the rules. If you go on any IDPA forum or Facebook group devoted to IDPA, you're going to find some lengthy discussions on the minutia of the rules. And it doesn't help that there have been multiple rulebook changes over the span of something like 5 years. Well, despite all this complexity and the occasional confusion that come with it, the sport is a ton of fun, and it's really, at its core, it's very simple. For the average shooter, it's straightforward. Just don't get lost in the weeds, and you'll be fine. My goal in the next episode, in the next few weeks, is going to be to make the rules simple and easy to understand for the new shooter. And today we're going to look at scoring and penalties. How does scoring work? In the previous episode, we talked about how the game's played, and I mentioned that your score is your time. You shoot a series of stages. You're timed on each stage. Your time is added to any points, which are based on your accuracy, and any penalties. And then all the cumulative times and penalties and points for the entire match are added up, and that's your total score. Now, one reason I have no interest at all in USPSA, and this is not a knock on USPSA. Some people love it. It looks like it's a lot of fun. But it seems like it requires trigonometry to figure out the scoring. I mean, based on your caliber, you're given a certain number of points based on where you hit the target, and the more accurate you are, the more points you get, and then that, along with your time, is then used to multiply something together to calculate something called hit factor, and the higher your hit factor, the better. That's just too mathy for me. If it's not simple, I don't care. I'm not going to sit down and do maths. To quote the Obama phone lady,
ain't nobody got time for that.
What I like about IDPA scoring is it's more straightforward. Points are still based on the parts of the target that you hit, just like in USPSA, but it works the other way around. It actually adds time to your overall score. The more accurate you are, the fewer points you get. And those points are added to your time. 1 point equals 1 second. It's really easy. So how does all of this work? When the buzzer goes off and you start a run for your stage, the shot timer records the exact times each time that your gun fires. It's kind of like a stopwatch, but it's more complicated. It's more sophisticated. It records individual times each time that your gun fires. And the last recorded shot is your time for that stage. It's what we call your raw time. It's raw in that it has not been altered by adding points or penalties. We'll discuss those things in a minute. Now, the official IDPA cardboard target is vaguely human-shaped, if you've never seen one. It's more like a fat bowling pin. At the top, there's a 6-inch head that's square that has 2 scoring zones. The larger part of the target, the bottom of the target, the body, has 3 zones. And each of those scoring zones is indicated not by lines drawn on the target, but by perforations in the cardboard. And each one of those zones is given a number, and the number indicates the number of points down, the number of points that you receive for a shot in that zone. So there's 0, 1, and 3. So in the head, you've got a 4-inch circle in the middle, and that's your 0 zone. And there's an 8-inch circle in the middle of the body. That's your 0 zone for the body. Shots in those 2 zones add no points to your score. The next zone surrounding the head, the circle in the head, and surrounding the circle in the middle of the body is down 1. And then outside of that in the body is down 3. And again, each point is a second added to your time. Now, I know listening to numbers without actually looking at them is a little hard, so I'm going to try to keep this a little simple as I give you an example. If you were to run a stage, and at the end when you finish, your raw time, that last shot, is 10 seconds flat. But you have 2 shots that land in the down 3 zone, in the 2 zones outside the center. That's 3 times 2, that's 6 points. That's 6 seconds that is added to your time. So your total time for the stage would be 16 seconds. Make sense? Scoring is typically based on a best of basis. The best 2 shots are going to be counted, the best 3 shots, or maybe even the best 1 shot in some cases. So for example, if you come to a stage where you're required to shoot each target twice, but the stage description says that you can shoot the targets more than that, and only the best 2 will be scored, then you can shoot as many times as you want. Obviously, it's going to count more time the more you shoot at it. But if you miss 3 times and you hit the target in the down 0 twice, then those 2 in the down 0 are what are going to count. It doesn't matter that you missed 2 other times or 3 other times. There was a time when every point was a fraction of a second, not a full second. So back then you could outrun your bad shooting. The reason I bring this up is because is to emphasize how important accuracy is. There was a time when you could shoot really fast and be reasonably accurate and still have a really good score. The 2017 rules changed that. So now the slower, more accurate shooter may actually beat the faster, slightly less accurate shooter. And misses have a huge effect on your score. I mentioned misses earlier. They count 5 points. That's 5 seconds for every miss. In the old scoring, that was half a second per point. So 2.5 seconds for a miss. And under that system, you could shoot a stage and then realize that you missed a target, but it might be worth it if you were fast enough to just let it go and not make that shot up. But now, because a miss is 5 points, it might be worth your time to take an extra shot at the end to make sure you get a better hit or to make up a miss. So what else can affect your score? Penalties. The most common and the most damaging penalty that I make fun of in the show opener is shooting non-threats. In each stage, you might be faced with a series of targets in different positions and different distances. Some will be moving, some will be stationary, some will be what we call non-threats. And these targets usually have a pair of black or white hands painted on them like jazz hands to indicate that they're not to be shot. And it's sort of like, remember, this is based on defensive shooting, on self-defense scenarios and situations. So if you're defending yourself in a public place, like a store or a restaurant, there's probably going to be innocent bystanders around, other customers, other, waitresses, or cashiers, those people. You don't want to shoot them.
Oh man, I shot Marvin in the face. Why the f*** you do that? Well, I didn't mean to do it. It was an accident.
So the same is true in the scenarios and the stages that we shoot in IDPA. So when you encounter one or more of these non-threat targets, you don't want to shoot them because it's really costly. If you do, it's 5 points for every bullet hole. You used to get 5 points for hitting the target at all. So when a shooter realized that he'd shot a non-threat, he'd just blaze away and keep on going and not care about his accuracy from that point on. But now, in the current rule book, in the 2017 rules, every single time you shoot a non-threat, it's 5 points, 5 seconds. Now, as you heard in the intro, at the National Championship in 2016, I shot the same non-threat target 4 times in the head. Now, that was before the 2017 rule book. In today's rules, that would be 20 points just for those 4 shots, and your match is pretty much sunk at that point. Match directors are going to put non-threats into stages in positions that are going to make your shots more difficult, to make you concentrate on your accuracy. So be aware of that. Other targets may be partially painted black. You'll see targets that, like they call referee targets or tuxedo targets, where the sides of the targets are painted black, or you may see targets where the whole body of the target is black and only the head is not. This black paint is used to indicate things like hard cover or body armor, and it's also a way of forcing you to shoot more accurately. Now, if you hit those black sections of the targets, there's no penalty, but it will count as a miss, so you need to make sure that you make those up. if you can. Some stages won't allow you to make those up. The most, I guess, it used to be the most common, but not so much anymore, is the procedural error, or the PE. This is a 3-second penalty that is handed out typically for not following stage descriptions or inadvertently breaking the rules. An example would be crossing an open door with an unloaded gun, failing to shoot targets in the correct order, stepping over a fault line and shooting a target, dropping a loaded magazine and failing to pick it up before you move on and shoot the next target, a false start where you move and start to draw your gun before the buzzer goes off. The saying goes that these are lessons that you learn 3 seconds at a time. One of these penalties is failure to engage. So if you overlook a target and fail to shoot at it, you'll get a penalty for failure to engage. It's a 3-second penalty. Now, I've done this. It's easy to do, especially if you don't walk through a stage thoroughly and there are targets that might be obscured behind barriers or barrels, and they're only visible from certain shooting positions. But this is a particularly costly 3-second penalty, because if you don't engage a target, then the 2 times or 3 times that you were supposed to shoot that target count as misses on top of the 3 seconds. There are less common penalties that are more costly. There's something called the flagrant penalty, which I've never seen, but they're in the rules to prevent sort of flagrantly violating the rules to gain an advantage competitively. So there's an example they provide. If a stage requires you to go prone to shoot lying down, and instead of lying down, you shoot standing up, or you shoot kneeling, that would be a flagrant penalty because you have an advantage because you are able to shoot from a more comfortable position, and giving you a 3-second penalty isn't really enough to address the advantage that you got from breaking that rule. So you get a 10-second flagrant penalty. I haven't seen this done because most of the people that I've seen shooting matches from the local to the even up to the national level are not really looking to break the rules to gain advantages. They're generally the kind of procedural errors, or the kind of errors that you see most often are the inadvertent things. The really, really biggie that I've never seen handed out, I've heard it threatened, but I've never seen it handed out, is the failure to do right, or the FTDR. This is a 20-point, 20-second penalty handed out for gross unsportsmanlike conduct. So throwing a tantrum and throwing your equipment, or cursing at the match director or the safety officer for your stage because you're not happy about how things went, or you're not happy that he gave you a penalty or something, that will cost you. So keep your emotions in check if you're not happy with the way things go on a particular stage. I've never seen this happen, but it's in the rule book just in case, because human nature is that people are not nice to each other, and occasionally they say and do things that they wouldn't normally say or do. This can also be, the where I've mostly heard this referred to is in reference to pasting targets, refusing to paste targets. You're expected to help out to keep things moving, and if you refuse to do it, you may get an FTDR. Now, I've seen match directors and safety officers threaten it. I've never actually seen this handed out. The FTDR has to be approved by a match director. So consider yourself warned. If you hear it threatened, just get up and help a brother out and paste some targets. It's not really hard. Don't be lazy, and don't sit around when other people are doing the work to help keep things moving. So that's really it. When you're finished shooting a stage, the safety officer on that stage is going to call out your raw time. The scorekeeper will record it, and then you'll go forward, you'll score the targets, you'll total up the number of points. Those will be recorded by the scorekeeper, and then you'll be informed of any penalties that you might have committed and explained, what they are and why they happened. And then finally, all the points and the penalties will be added together on your score sheet, and you'll be asked to sign it. That's it. Time plus points plus penalties. No tricky calculations, no multiplication, no division. It's really straightforward. It's easy scoring, and that's why I like it. All right, that's all I've got for you today. If you have any questions or any comments about what you heard here on the show today or about a rule, send me an email at Lloyd, Lloyd, at unloadpodcast.com. Be sure to visit the website, unloadpodcast.com, for show notes and links to other great resources. In our next episode, we're going to continue our introduction to IDPA with an introduction to matches, divisions, and classifications. So be sure to join us for that. Thank you for listening. Tune in again next time for another edition of Unload and Show Clear.